Hey ZZ fans, coming to you from in between the NatLand launch week to give you some updates and theory crafting on Jane Doe to help you determine what weapons and builds are best for you. And before we begin, I must mention that this footage and aforementioned information are from the creative beta server and unfortunately are subject to change. But that doesn't mean we don't already have a great idea about what Jane Doe does, and what we're going to give you now is the shakedown on all that. Now thankfully, Jane Doe does break out of the hyper carry meta of GN and Ellen Jo. Although both characters are fun in their own right, their lines of going from stun to support to follow-up can be a bit stale. With Jane Doe, you're able to mix it up, and if you're smart about how you're able to set up damage, as long as you time things correctly, it doesn't matter how you get there. And with that, let me make my opening statement that Jane Doe is one of the best free-to-play damage dealers in the entire game. Let's start breaking down the damage. The majority of damage doesn't compile through her basics or skills alone, but through the accumulation of attribute Anomaly-Assault. Now with Assault, you're able to perform crits. For those who are not in the know, there are two subcategories of attribute anomaly for the 5 elements. Shock, burn, and corruption are considered dots or damage over time. These cannot crit, however they can reapply the anomaly by virtue of dealing the respective attribute anomaly damage for a few seconds, meaning that in that window, let's say like a character of Jane Doe or a weapon would require that attribute anomaly to be present. Wouldn't you think those 3 setup anomalies would do the trick? Then there's Assaults and Freeze/Shatter, both of which do not perform dots, yet they actually crit. So when it comes to Jane Doe's build, funneling her into a set that particular aids in the damage of accumulating anomaly, such as the Fang Metal, would be ideal. Compared of the Fang Metal to the Freedom Blues, the Fang Metal edges out of the 4 bonus anomaly set, just purely based on the frequency of assault afflictions. And because of the first assault not being the hardest hitting, you actually need to set up for your second anomaly crit to be much larger. That's generally how Jane Doe sets up. And sorry to make y'all wait for this, but your patience is appreciated. Let's start going through the weapons, because I'm not gonna lie, some of these really impressed me. Pause if you're a nitpicky theory crafter, because here are the stats of the character so far. So let's start with Jane Doe's signature, the Sharp Stinger. This weapon provides the highest AP out of any W engine so far. It provides a staggering amount of base attack too, and gives us up to 36 physical damage bonus and 40% increase anomaly buildup. Remember how I mentioned that it's about frequency of assaults? Imagine that you're being paid twice a month, but your coworker was getting the same amount each pay stub, but earning it 3 times a month. You'd probably be pissed, and so are the enemies of Jane Doe. So with this weapon, you would expect to deal quite a bit more damage, and let's take a look. 242,000 assault damage, and note that each rotation that I show here will slightly look a little bit different. That's because the setup for each weapon is different. More on that later. So if 242,000 looks a little bit mediocre to you, not all my skills are leveled out yet again, just to give a bit more realism for the general populace. I will be doing a C6 showcase of Jane Doe when she releases, so make sure you subscribe now to this channel so that you can catch that later. And let me tell you, Jane Doe's bakery does grow 0.04% for every mindscape that you have. And that's on my mama. But let's take a look at the 150% stun multiplier, and 363k just looks a little bit nicer, doesn't it? Understandably, not all your rotations are going to be stun rotations, unless you're including a Chingy into your team, but we'll talk about teams just a little bit towards the end. Next, we have the Fusion Compiler, giving Pen as the secondary stat, which has been proven to be leagues below what attack stats should provide, but we'll take it. The passive giving us anomaly proficiency is the kicker here, and let's show you the combo here, and boom, hey, we're hitting for 209k with regular assault and 307 with the stun bonus. Note that you do have to bake in 3 special attacks, which is not that hard. You just gotta remember to first start with the passion state with it before you Sao Cow jump, do another one, and then when you end your Sao Cow or your passion state, end up with a 3rd. So the Fusion Compiler is leagues below the signature. Big whoop. The A tier's gotta be worse, right? Well, my sweet summer child, this is where your assumptions are actually wrong. Well, not entirely. Let's dig a little deeper. For the Rainforest Gourmet, which is another standalone W engine, it does 185k assaults and 307k with stun. Not too shabby for an A tier that you might have, and just so I don't forget, all these weapons are graded from S tier refinement 0 A tier Refinement 5. Then we go to the attribute weapons of Weeping Gemini and Electro Lip Gloss. To be honest, these weapons surprised me big time, because with the R5 Weeping Gemini first, you need to accumulate 4 total stacks of attribute Anomaly. From another character, obviously not the most ideal situation, but here you are for the tip-top damage potential. With a full 4 stacks, we can take Jane Doe up to a whopping 281k assault and 345k with stun. That's the most we've seen so far. Wait a minute. Because with the extra attribute accumulation from the core bonus of Jane Doe, alongside the 160 bonus AP, total 600 attack bonus from Jane, it seems like a no-brainer that this weapon is superior, correct? Well, again, this is where we snap back to reality, because that's just not realistic. To expect a full 4 stacks every rotation and to get a stun, so going back to that money analogy, it's like getting paid overtime 1 week and then getting half of your pay in the latter half of the month. It balances out a little bit. Overall, even though the top damage is great, the actual realized damage is around 80 to 90% potential of the signature, which is actually enemy dependent. But this means in order to achieve this, you almost have to play perfectly into your rotation. As with the signature, you only need 3 dash attacks. That's so easy to get off the ground, to be honest. Then comes your Electro Lip Gloss, again utilizing Grace as our secondary helper, and thus the attack bonus and attribute anomaly is slightly higher. We get 233k assault and 350k with stuns. These are big damage numbers for the Battle Pass weapon, but few things to consider. Again, for now, you only can have a max of Refinement 2 Electro Lip Gloss. This means that the scale damage increase is less. And with that, alongside the factor of Jane Doe's extra anomaly buildup, it is slightly lower than Gemini, around 77 to 80%. But it's actually still good in terms of application. That could even jump to around 85% with the Refinement 5. Now that we have these number comparisons, yes, the anomaly damage tells one story, but not the whole story. We factored in the timing and accumulations of assaults per fight, in particular with the boss, and found that these signatures of Sharp and Stinger, with dishing out assaults, they just did it faster and cleared the bosses way easier, even though the individual assault numbers wasn't the highest per se. But by the bonus on the physical and anomaly buildup, this makes it such that thus the anomaly attribute damage is double time. Like with my pay stub analogy, being paid a similar amount as the others, but being paid 3 times per month versus the bi-monthly. The signature is just winning by a lot here. But Josh, didn't you say this character was free to play? What happened to that if that's 70% less overall damage? Well, Sunny, in this case, let's show you actually the Nineveh fight with Jane and some of the A tier weapon options. And, well, as you can see, we're just practically shredding through Nineveh. See, the content doesn't necessarily require you to max out crazy builds just yet, so understanding how to use her in the context of which weapon you have is actually more important. Like I mentioned, each weapon will change the playstyle of Jane Doe to what she wants us to set up with more, either EX skills, dash attacks, using another attribute anomaly, but at the end of the day, it's about how fast and how strong those assault anomalies are coming. If you are curious on how to play her or curious about her build guide, make sure to join our community Discord as well as our live streams on Twitch so you guys can answer questions real time. Then let's move on to team setups. I've yet to get a full grasp of all the teams admittingly, but the core of Jane Doe, Grace, and Seth are extremely potent from those who had theory crafted before. These are very fast to rotate in and out of, and gifting an extra 50 AP for Jane Doe, especially with M1 buff, I'll make it last longer. It's great to make up the deficit of requiring or needing 420 AP to max out the 600 attack bonus. Then comes in teams like Piper, Lucy, Jane, which honestly is not even that bad either, but again, you aren't getting the max potential because you aren't setting up with a dot attribute anomaly beforehand. But the sheer amount of damage is pretty solid. And in this case, why not try out Jane Doe, Grace, Chingy, or Ambi? Really solid, or even Jane Doe, Nicole, Seth. Jane Doe does have ult for AoE, but if you're having trouble with 2 different mini bosses or elites, why not try to flex Nicole into a corruption role for Jane Doe? It actually is quite interesting. And lastly, a future team that I'd like to see work is the Jane Doe Bernice core, with any support or defense unit in the back. It's going to be fun to see this new meta of attribute anomaly, both with the crit and dot, and with new content seemingly coming around to force us into team variations with weakness and resistance versus just straight up annoying shields like before, the damage potential of these teams and disorder following will be flying high. Today was a great opportunity to showcase weapon potentials, team potentials, and theory crafting around Jane Doe. Hopefully now you're starting to build a little bit more of a keen eye on how to evaluate, build, and execute your own Jane Doe in the future. And again, make sure to follow on Twitch and our community Discord if you have any questions. But that's it for the video, but don't leave before you hit that subscribe button. Come on, go hit it now. And again, click on that Twitch link to catch us playing Zenless Zone Zero live and playtesting all these things for you. Or if you're staying a little bit more here on YouTube, make sure to click on this next video because YouTube thinks you'll like it. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you over there.